All right, welcome back, everybody. I am going to get right into it. I've got a story here. This week's episode is one that probably everyone listening right now or watching knows at least some details about, because it is one of these stories that just, even though took place in the 90s, it's changed so much in our country and our society. I am talking about the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. Jason, how old were you, or do you remember? I won't put you out there. Do you remember when you heard about that?
Yeah, I was 24 or so, something like that, and was like out of college and kind of probably watching the news more than I was when I was in college, and it was everywhere. It was this image of a building blown in half, and it was a shocker for the country. Of all the places in the world, of all the views in the world to see, you'd get helicopter shots, you get close-ups, and to know that there was, kids, babies, adults, mothers, fathers, etc., that this was not a military base or it wasn't a big skyscraper, like later on in 9/11, that was different for me and for the country, for anyone that tuned on the television, and we didn't have answers right away. So yeah, it was shocking.
Yeah, I can remember I was in 8th grade when that happened, and I can actually remember being in my, when the day after, I guess, the first day of school, my homeroom teacher, just an older woman, just losing her mind, just absolutely so pissed off that this had happened on American soil. It's just like such a vivid memory of mine. I can remember being in that classroom and her just I was in junior high. I knew it was bad, obviously, but I didn't understand the full context probably of why. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about some of the things in that case that maybe you didn't know, and some facts and just things that have come out since then that maybe, I don't know. I think it's important to talk about the stories like this because you try to identify how it happened, why it happened, how it can be prevented. And that's what we're talking about on this week's episode of How It All Went South. See you in a minute. All right. So again, everybody listening, watching, probably knows a good bit about this story, the Oklahoma City bombing. Everyone knows the name Timothy McVeigh. Everyone probably knows that it was explosive material placed in a van, a box truck, and parked in front of the building. So I'm going to go through some of that and how that actually came together. But I want to take you back a little bit before the actual bombing to see why maybe this happened in the first place. And the path to that bombing actually began a couple years before. And there were two very controversial federal standoffs that radicalized Timothy McVeigh, who was by all accounts a radical. I mean, this is a guy who, you think of like guys out in the Midwest somewhere forming a militia and, the government's that's this guy. The first was Ruby Ridge, Idaho. You've heard of this. We've talked about this.
We have.
That took place in 1992, in August of 92, and federal agents basically engaged in a 11-day standoff with a man named Randy Weaver and his family. During the confrontation, Weaver's 14-year-old son, Sam, and his wife, Vicky, were killed by federal agents alongside with U.S. Marshal William Deegan. Um, that, if you don't know, I think I, wink, wink, might do an episode on that next week or so, but it is truly a sad and really powerful story.
Yeah, we've talked about that one, like just you and I. I'm
Oh
actually
yeah,
glad. If you do an episode on that, I think that would be a really great next one. So please
yeah,
do it.
yeah. And so anyway, that, that was one of these events that it was a big deal. And it was all over like taxes and Randy Weaver and his family just felt that like, hey, I'm on my land. I own the land. Uh, you know, government, leave me alone. You can't tell me what to do on my land. And people, you had half of the people in the country essentially sort of going, well, you're nuts. Pay your taxes, do your thing like all the rest of us do. But you had a lot of people who went, I kind of get where he's coming from. And the federal agents shot and killed his son and his wife. And I think she was holding their infant daughter at the time that she was shot. I mean, it's just horrible, horrible story. So Timothy McVeigh was one of the people who absolutely sided with Randy Weaver. And the other, which I did not know this until researching, but the other one was Waco. Waco, Texas, of course, the siege, which lasted from February 28th to April 19th of 1993. Again, another story everybody knows about. When the federal agents raided the Davidian, the Branch Davidian compound led by David Koresh.
I really remember that.
Yeah.
I remember like the footage of like, oh, it's on fire.
Yeah, I remember. That was one that I truly, I think everybody that was alive and of an age where they could watch TV and know what was going on, because it played out for so long. I mean, almost 2 months, and it was every day, 24/7 on TV, and it just kept getting worse. But inevitably, eventually, of course, the compound caught fire and 76 people lost their lives, including, sadly, children. Timothy McVeigh had traveled to Waco during the siege to sell pro-gun rights bumper stickers and witness the events firsthand. You can actually go back and look at some of that footage. It's been found now. You can probably find it easily online. Maybe we'll show it on our YouTube, but you can see Timothy McVeigh there.
Did not know that.
Yeah, isn't that? And that's why I'm doing this episode on a story everyone has heard.
Did you know that walking into today's episode, like as you were putting it together, this just hit for you, or did you know that?
No, it just hit when I started researching for this episode. And you see him there, and it's so foretelling. I mean, it's, who would have known? You would have no way of knowing this guy is also going to be this domestic terrorist. But man, it's like that guy was so dedicated to this cause that as he saw it, and against the federal government, that he was seeking out. And I mean, God, the guy went to Waco, to the compound. I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah.
If you think about it, really. Anyway, he had begun planning his attack with two other accomplices, Terry Nichols and Michael Fortier. And he rented, of course, the Yellow Rider truck under a false name, Robert Kling, from Elliott's Body Shop in Junction City, Kansas. He then stayed at the Dreamland Motel from the 14th to the 17th of April 1995, using his real name when he checked in on the registration, but he ordered food. He ordered food to the hotel under the alias Kling. So not very consistent, I guess. So again, everybody kind of knows what happened. It's, puts explosives in a truck and parked it in front of a building, a federal building. His primary reason, according to him, for doing this was revenge against the federal government for what he perceived as tyrannical actions at Ruby Ridge and Waco. So these, again, influences from these two events were so strong in his mind that I've got to do something about this. And that violence was his way, I guess. He was a Gulf War veteran who had become completely radicalized and particularly targeted federal agencies like the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the FBI, and was influenced by the Turner Diaries. Have you ever heard of this? A fictional account of white supremacists who ignite a revolution by bombing FBI headquarters using a truck bomb. Have you ever heard of that?
No, it's not on my reading list.
It's not on mine either. That's another thing I didn't know.
Nope.
It's one of those things, like, there's so much that's been talked about and learned about with the Oklahoma City bombing. I never knew that. But there was a movie that was on Netflix that I just watched recently, and it's weird because it had a resurgence. It came out maybe like a year or two ago, and I don't think anyone saw it. Jude Law plays a FBI agent in the 50s. And he goes to this town, and there's it's a whole white supremacist thing, and he's trying to get them before they bomb something. Anyway, it's a fantastic movie, if I can remember the name. but it's it really made me think of that, and that movie for some reason had a resurgence recently and was number 1 on Netflix. But
that does happen. Like, this, like, it happens all the time on Netflix in particular.
Something happened where in society where all of a sudden something got zeroed in on. But in that, the people planning this attack against the government were following this book, and that's actually how they ended up catching them. And it's based on a true story, by the way. I'll have to remember the name of it. We'll put it in the comments. He deliberately chose April 19th, 1995 for the attack to coincide with the second anniversary of the Waco fire, as well as the 220th anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord from the American Revolution. There was a lot of thought put into what he did.
Yeah.
And you imagine if he would applied himself to something positive.
I wonder how long it took FBI or even reporters to be like, wasn't it exactly 2 years ago today? Or, I mean, like, to be able to line that stuff up.
Yeah. I mean, but even more so, I think he made these things known.
Okay.
Because his whole thing is, he wanted to inspire a revolution against what he saw as the tyrannical federal government. I mean, that was his goal.
And this fits right in the category. We talk about this a lot. These stories that happened, they were so huge. And then you revisit them like we're doing today. And it falls into 2 buckets. One is like, I remember when that happened, but I don't remember all this stuff that happened. And you just don't retain it because it is so big.
Yeah.
Or you're a young person and, you're under 30, let's say. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like the Oklahoma City, like what happened?
Yeah.
And it is fresh and it's not really taught in history class, or like you kind of have to discover it on your own or look at a documentary series on Netflix. It's crazy how that works when we kind of dive into these type of stories that were so huge, but there's a bunch of people that maybe don't know all the details,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we lived through it, and I don't, like you said, I don't, and some of the things have been learned since and put together since, and it's not something we follow every day. This was, 30 years ago.
True.
Almost. I am dating myself, aging myself again. But anyway, so this was everything was kind of meticulously planned by McVeigh. On the morning of the attack, he wore a t-shirt with Sic Semper Tyrannis, which means thus always to tyrants, and a quote from Thomas Jefferson about refreshing the tree of liberty. Whatever, there's a lot of moving parts in his
mind.
In his mind, yeah.
He had it all. He had it all like framed and figured out.
Yeah. At 9:02 a.m. on April 19th, 1995, McVeigh detonated a massive truck bomb containing 4,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate, diesel fuel, and other chemicals parked in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City. The 9-story building housed 14 federal agencies, including the ATF, FBI, Social Security Administration, and various military recruiting offices. The explosion. Now, we talked about this for a second, Jason, at the top of this episode. There's such an iconic image that we'll show, but of that building, that it's like a semicircular chunk of the building was just removed.
Gone.
It's crazy, and it is such an iconic image because it's like it just blasted through you. This was a 14-story federal building. Federal buildings aren't just traditionally brick and mortar.
Right.
They're reinforced.
Yeah.
So let that sink in. The explosion was devastating in its scope and impact to the point that the blast destroyed 1/3 of the building, causing the floors to pancake and collapse into the center. The force of the explosion damaged 324 surrounding buildings, overturned cars, and blew out windows and doors in a 50-block area.
Didn't know that.
Think of that. And this explosion was felt 55 miles away and registered a 6.0 on the Richter scale. Take a second and think about what that would really be like to experience in any way. That is massive.
That's why, as there's been news of other people who've tried to pull up bombings, like we've heard of people like trying to plan Times Square things. It's awful to think about.
Sure.
But like you think about what's around there, the buildings, the signs, the glass, can you imagine? I mean, like Oklahoma City is where it's at, right?
Yeah.
Like location wise, this building was not kind of in a super heavy populated area with skyscrapers.
It ain't
and
Times
everything.
Square. Yeah.
Right. And think about that.
Yeah, it's just, to register a 6.0 on the Richter scale. I mean, a 6.0, I've talked about it before in the show. I've been in numerous earthquakes in LA. And I think the most powerful one I've ever been in was maybe just under a 5 or a 5. And I mean, at one time I got rolled out of bed. I mean, it's the earth is shaking. So to register as a 6, that blew my mind. I did not know that.
I don't have a whole lot of experience. I will tell you the day my oldest son, Sam, was born, there was an earthquake in Atlanta.
The earth shook.
Yes, that's kind of been the legend for so many years.
The Oklahoma City bombing claimed 168 lives, including 19 children who were in America's Kids Daycare Center that was located on the 2nd floor of the building. And God, it's all terrible, but that one, I can't even imagine how horrible that is on every aspect. The families, the just people, and everything, and just the officers and the recovery people, having to go through the rubble because they had to do it. It's absolutely terrible. Among the victims, 167 people died in the initial blast, with one rescue worker becoming the 168th fatality when struck by falling debris. Additionally, 684 people were injured in the attack, with some reports indicating as many as over 850 injured. The human toll, of course, extended far beyond the immediate casualties. 30 children were orphaned by the bombing, and that's something that you don't always think about right away. These kids may have lost both parents that worked in the same building, or, and just now they don't have parents, and it's obviously life-changing and awful. And 219 children lost at least one parent. More than 400 individuals were left homeless, and approximately 7,000 people lost their workplace. An estimated 360,000 Oklahomans knew someone who worked in that building, and altogether property damage was an estimated $652 million.
Wow.
Yeah. And you're talking, $93 or $1995.
Yeah.
That's, It's crazy.
It's $1 billion today.
A 50 block radius. People were getting doors and windows blown out. That's massive.
Yeah.
Within 90 minutes of the explosion, McVeigh was stopped by Oklahoma Highway Patrolman Charlie Hanger for driving without a license plate and arrested for illegal weapons possessions. And what a stroke of luck that was. Truly. The break in the case came when investigators found the rear axle of the Ryder truck about a block from the building, which contained a partial VIN number. And that led to Elliott's Body Shop in Junction City, Kansas, where employees provided descriptions that matched McVeigh. The FBI launched a massive investigation called OK Bomb, involving all 56 domestic field offices and foreign offices. That's a massive operation. This was a huge deal.
Hundreds of millions of dollars just for the investigation, too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Within 48 hours, McVeigh was identified as a prime suspect. Chemical residue found on his clothing and earplugs provided forensic evidence of recent explosives handling, including PETN residue from detonation cord and EGDN residue from dynamite. Terry Nichols was arrested shortly after. That was one of the guys who was initially helping him out. Both men were indicted on August 10th, 1995. McVeigh and Nichols were tried separately due to the severity of the charges and, of course, the extensive media coverage that we talked about. McVeigh's trial began in 1997, and he was convicted on 11 federal counts, including conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction, the use of such a weapon, destruction by explosives, and 8 counts of first-degree murder. And I don't know why that 8 counts of first-degree murder. I didn't look into why that charge. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe if somebody knows, put it in the comments if you know why that is, or otherwise we'll revisit it. On June 13th of 97, the jury recommended the death penalty, which was formally imposed by the federal judge on the 14th of August. Terry Nichols was convicted on December 23rd of conspiracy and 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And the jury deadlocked, though, on the death penalty for him, which I am surprised to hear that, because a case of that magnitude.
It could have been religious in nature.
Maybe
people won't cross that. You never know.
But even though, you're helping this guy, even though you weren't the one that pushed the button.
Right.
Oklahoma state courts convicted Nichols of 161 counts of first-degree murder in 2004, sentencing him to 161 consecutive life terms. Michael Fortier, the other accomplice, who had advanced knowledge of the plot, but of course didn't warn anyone, cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence of 12 years in prison. Timothy McVeigh was executed by lethal injection on June 11th, 2001 at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana, just over 6 years after the bombing. His execution was carried out relatively quickly due to his refusal to pursue appeals or stays of execution. And I mean, that is insanely fast for an execution to happen when you're on death row.
It is.
You hear people.
It makes you think he wanted to make a statement, right? By his own death by execution.
Yeah. Today, the Oklahoma City bombing still remains one of the absolutely, deadliest acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. I think it is the deadliest, actually, act of terrorism in U.S. history. Fundamentally changed how we view domestic security and threats, and again, that was another thing, a precursor to 9/11. But things really changed after that happened. It was, people paid attention. This van, this weird thing or cars parked. I mean, it was something that you paid attention to. It also changed federal building security and highlighted, the dangers of these people who were anti-government and outspoken, and these sort of groups that get together and militia and form militias and all that stuff. It just meant that you got to take these guys seriously. So, anyway, that's the Oklahoma City bombing. I thought it was interesting to sort of revisit that with a fresh set of ears, so to speak. And I actually did. I learned a lot of things about that I didn't remember or didn't know from when I was younger.
Me too. You just don't retain it.
Yeah. So that's all we got for this week's episode. Thanks, guys. Hit the socials at How It All Went South. If you got a story or you want to tell us you love us, you hate us, email us at howitallwentsouth@gmail.com. I'm Sean. He's Jason. We'll see you.